You know, Sophia, I really admire people who start with nothing. It shows that hard work is enough good to change your life.
You mean good enough, Dad?
Right, good enough. Anyway, look at this tech CEO. He built everything from scratch.
He's talented, sure. But Dad, that scratch usually includes a huge safety net that most people don't have.
Safety net? He still took a risk. Why do you always look for the but in every success story?
Because the but is where the privilege is hidden, Dad. Let's talk about what self-made actually means today. Today, we're unpacking the self-made myth that dominates our social feeds and our bank accounts. Is success purely the result of individual grit, or is it a privilege only a few can afford to lose?
Well, I've always believed that hard work is the ultimate equalizer. If you're willing to hustle, the doors of opportunity are open to everyone.
But Dad, when some people start the race 10 miles ahead, is it really a level playing field, or is it just a rigged system?
It feels like your generation focuses so much on the quote-unquote safety net that you forget the individual effort required to actually win the race. Maybe we just see different parts of the same picture.
Hello there, listeners. Before we jump into the heart of the wealth gap debate, let's introduce ourselves properly.
Hello, I'm David. I'm a first-generation immigrant and an IT manager who built my career on data and logic.
And I'm Sophia, a business communication specialist. This podcast is designed for B2-C1 English learners who crave intellectual and authentic talks.
I provide the real-world experience, though I often make linguistic mistakes, like my struggle with enough earlier. Sophia is here to provide those radical candor corrections.
We'll fix Dad's grammar and decide if self-made is an authentic label or just a clever marketing story. Spoiler alert, sometimes the truth about money hurts, but a preposition error in a contract hurts much more.
Sophia, look at this. This kid built a billion-dollar company in his garage, starting with absolutely nothing.
I saw that one, Dad. But did you see the part about the massive seed loan his wealthy parents gave him?
Even with a loan, you need incredible grit to succeed. I always believed that having a strong dream was enough good to make it in this country.
It's good enough. Dad, the adjective comes first. And sure, grit helps, but it's a lot easier to work 20 hours a day when you aren't worried about starving if you fail.
You're so focused on the money that you're ignoring the man's talent. Are you saying my own success as an immigrant was just a matter of luck too?
Not luck, but access to a world that isn't as open to new arrivals it used to be. You had a ladder that actually reached the window, but our ladder is missing half its rungs.
We didn't even have a ladder. We used our bare hands to climb the bricks. It feels like your generation just wants to complain about the height of the wall.
We aren't complaining. We're just pointing out that the wall is higher and greased. It's hard to stay motivated when you see others taking an elevator to the top.
If we stop believing in the self-made story, we admit we have no agency over our lives. Tell me, who is responsible for the people who just give up because they think the system is rigged?
It's not about giving up. It's about demanding intellectual honesty. We want to know that if we take a leap, we aren't the only ones without a safety net.
I never had a safety net, and I managed to build a life for us. Maybe the fear of falling is what's really holding you back, not the wall itself.
That's exactly the point, Dad. If that rich kid slips off his wall, he hits a mattress. If we slip, we hit the concrete.
Concrete? That's a bit dramatic, Sophia, because I've always believed this country offers the possibility to succeed to anyone with a brain.
You mean opportunity, Dad. And those two words are worlds apart in today's economy. Everyone has the possibility to win the lottery, but an opportunity is having the actual money to buy the ticket and survive if you lose.
You're always correcting my English, but you can't correct the fact that I started with nothing. I didn't let the fear of hitting the concrete stop me from building this business for our family.
That's because when you started, the wall wasn't 50 stories high, and the cost of a mistake wasn't a lifetime of crippling debt. Today, the gap between making it and losing everything is so wide that only the wealthy can afford to be brave.
I agree the stakes are higher now, but the spirit of the quote-unquote self-made man is about the willingness to take that leap anyway. If you keep waiting for a perfect safety net, you'll be waiting forever while others pass you by.
But Dad, that's just survivorship bias talking. We only hear from the one guy who survived the fall. We never interview the thousands of people whose lives were ruined because they didn't have a wealthy family to catch them.
So you think risk is just a luxury product that you buy with a trust fund? That's a very uninspiring way to look at entrepreneurship and the human drive to improve.
It's the honest way, because cognitive bandwidth is real. Stress about rent literally makes it harder to think strategically. It's easy to be a visionary when you aren't using 90% of your brain just to figure out how to eat next week.
I worked 3 jobs and slept 4 hours a night, yet my bandwidth seemed to handle it just fine. Maybe that pressure is exactly what creates the grit you say is so rare these days.
Or maybe you were just lucky enough to have a brain that didn't break under the weight of that toxic stress. I just want us to stop acting like the kid with a safety net and the kid with nothing are running the same race.
I suppose I never saw safety as a competitive advantage, but you make it sound like the most important asset of all. It makes me wonder if I would have been as brave if I knew how hard the ground really was.
Exactly. And admitting that doesn't take away from your hard work, it just adds context to the self-made myth. Let's be honest about the padding on the floor so we can actually help more people start climbing.
You know, Sophia, hearing you talk about concrete makes me realize I might have been a bit too loud about my own struggle. I've always said I was 100% self-made, but maybe I've been rewriting my own history in my head.
What do you mean by that? You've always told me that every penny we have came from your own sweat and those legendary 20-hour workdays.
That part is true, but I suddenly remembered a cold January in 1998 when I almost lost the first warehouse. My old friend Mr. Choi saw me struggling, and he borrowed me $5,000 without asking for a single cent of interest.
Wait, Dad, you mean he lent you the money? You are the one who borrowed it from him, so he was actually your hidden ladder during that crisis.
Right, he lent it to me. I've spent 20 years calling myself self-made that I actually forgot about the people who helped me stay on the wall.
It's a common psychological trap called hindsight bias, where we think our success was inevitable and entirely our own doing. If Mr. Choi hadn't stepped in, our family's story would have been very different in 2026.
It's humbling to admit, but you're right. I had a safety net made of friendship and trust that I never properly acknowledged. It makes me wonder how many other self-made heroes are just people who forgot who lent them a hand.
Exactly. And that's the transparency we need, because in 2026, social capital like that is getting harder to find for people starting from zero. We need to stop romanticizing the lone wolf and start valuing the community that supports the climb.
I suppose admitting I had help doesn't make my hard work any less real, does it? It just means I wasn't alone on that high wall, and someone made sure the ground wasn't as hard as it could have been.
It actually makes your story more powerful because it's honest and human. Let's finish our coffee and record this so we can tell the world that success is always a team-made effort, not a self-made myth.
Agreed, and I think I'll call Mr. Choi today just to say thank you for being my mattress back then. Let's head to the studio and give our listeners something real to think about.
Dad, now that we're in the studio, let's look at why your 1996 version of hard work doesn't produce the same results in today. We need to talk about how the economic clock was ticking much slower when you started.
Hard work is a universal currency, Sophia, and it doesn't have an expiration date. If you put in the hours, the market eventually rewards you regardless of the year on the calendar.
That's a romantic thought, but the price of admission to the middle class has outpaced wages by nearly 400% since you bought your first house. You weren't just working harder, you were working in an era of massive asset inflation that acted like a tailwind for your savings.
We also had 15% interest rates back then, which made every loan a terrifying gamble. I can give you many advices on how to survive high-interest environments if you're willing to listen.
It's just advice, Dad. It's an uncountable noun. And while interest was high, The principal amount was low enough that a waiter could actually save up for a down payment in 3 years.
All right, the advice is that we did not have the distractions or the lifestyle inflation your generation sized to crave. We lived in tiny apartments and did not spend a half-hour paycheck on subscription services and gourmet coffee.
Avocado toast isn't the reason we can't afford homes, Dad. It's the fact that entry-level salaries have stayed flat, while the walls we discussed earlier have tripled in height. You caught the last wave of the Great Expansion, but my generation is trying to surf in a bathtub that's being drained.
So you're saying I'm just a lucky man who happened to be born at the right time. It feels like you're trying to strip away the self-made badge I've worn for 30 years.
I'm not stripping it away. I'm just adding a date of issue to it. Acknowledging that the 90s provided a unique window of opportunity doesn't mean you didn't work hard. It just means the window is now a solid brick wall.
It's hard to hear that my grit might have had a silent partner called favorable macroeconomics. Let's dig into the actual numbers in the next segment to see if I really was just a passenger on a lucky train.
Dad, we need to address the elephant in the room, the massive asset gap that makes saving feel pointless for my generation. It's not that we don't want to save, it's that the cost of assets is growing 10 times faster than our bank accounts.
Wealth always starts with saving every penny and letting the miracle of compound interest do the heavy lifting over time. You can't just look at the price of houses and give up on the basic discipline of building a quote-unquote seed for your future.
Compound interest is a powerful tool, but it requires a significant starting principle to actually make a dent in today's market. If your starting line is 0, the math of saving simply cannot compete with the math of inherited wealth in 2026.
I didn't have a large principal either, but I was always looking for the right informations about property and business from my successful friends. I learned early on that who you know is just as important as what you have in your wallet.
It's just information, Dad. It's an uncountable noun, so you never add an S at the end. And those successful friends were a form of social capital that acted as a silent multiplier for every dollar you saved.
Right, information is the key, but you make it sound like my friendships were just business assets instead of genuine human connections built through years of mutual struggle.
I'm sure they were genuine, but a wealthy network provides the kind of insider alpha that you simply cannot get from a public library or a textbook. Today, that gap is widening because wealth is becoming concentrated in families who pass down both money and the connections to grow it.
So you're saying the American dream has shifted from an individual sprint to a family relay race where the baton is everything. I suppose I never realized that my own network was a ladder I was building for you without even knowing it.
Precisely. And if your parents didn't pass you a baton, you're starting the race 3 laps behind the kids who did. It's hard to win when the other runners are starting at the halfway mark with better shoes and a coach.
That's a sobering thought to end this segment on, and it makes me look at my own bank balance with a lot more humility. Let's take one last break before we discuss how to actually fix this broken track for the next generation.
Dad, we need to stop talking about grit as if we're still in a world of physical labor and handshakes. In the modern age, the real barrier isn't a physical wall, but an invisible algorithm that decides who even gets to see the ladder.
Technology is supposed to be a tool, not an excuse for failure or a reason to give up. You have the entire world's knowledge in your pocket, while I had to beg for a single lead in a dusty phone book.
Knowledge doesn't matter when we don't own the means of production anymore. You owned your warehouse and your tools, but my generation is just renting digital space from giant corporations who can turn us off at any moment.
You make it sound so hopeless, yet I see you buying all these expensive new equipments every single year. If you can afford the latest gadgets, you can surely afford to find a way to make them work for your own success.
It's just equipment, Dad. It's uncountable, no matter how many gadgets I buy. And having the gear is useless when digital gatekeepers charge us a monthly subscription just for the privilege of working in their world.
So in your world, there is no room for the human spirit or the self-made hero anymore. It's a cold, mechanical way to live, and I refuse to accept that my daughter is just a line of code in someone else's computer.
I don't want to accept it either, but I'm tired of being told to climb a wall that is being actively moved by a machine I can't even see. I don't think you can hear the sound of the world changing from where you're sitting, Dad.
Hearing you say that makes me feel like a man from a different century. If our worlds are this far apart, then I definitely need to see what you're seeing.
Thanks, Dad. It won't be easy to reconcile, but that's exactly why we're having this conversation today.
I've been sitting here in this quiet room, and I'm starting to realize that I might be responsible of creating some of this generational pressure. I always thought that providing for you meant showing you that work should never stop, no matter how tired you felt.
You mean you're responsible for it, Dad? Though I truly appreciate the vulnerability it took for you to admit that. It is incredibly hard to reconcile your heroic version of grit with the constant, soul-crushing exhaustion my peers and I feel every single day.
For me, the grind was a protective shield against the terrifying uncertainty of being an immigrant in a competitive new world. I didn't see it as a burden back then because it was the only weapon I had to ensure our family's survival.
I deeply respect that survival was your priority, but now that same hustle has become a mandatory performance that leaves no room for actual living. We are expected to be available 24/7. And it feels like our human worth is tied solely to our constant digital output.
I never intended for my dedication to become a toxic standard that robs you of your inner peace and mental clarity. It honestly pains me to think that the very ladder I built for you might be the thing making you feel trapped and breathless.
The ladder itself isn't the problem, but the expectation that we must climb it without ever stopping for breath is what eventually breaks us. We need to find a way to honor your incredible work ethic without sacrificing our basic humanity to an endless, unfeeling algorithm.
Maybe I was so focused on the final destination that I neglected to teach you how to enjoy the scenery along the way. I want to understand how we can redefine effort together so it feels like a meaningful choice rather than a life sentence.
It starts with acknowledging that rest is a fundamental right, not a reward that we have to earn through total physical and mental exhaustion. If we can finally agree on that, then maybe we can start building a version of success that actually feels sustainable for my generation.
I used to think that as long as there was a possibility to work hard, success was guaranteed for anyone with enough grit. I'm starting to realize that my generation often confused a mere chance with a fair path forward.
You're talking about an opportunity, Dad, which is a specific set of circumstances that make success actually attainable. A possibility is just a mathematical chance, but an opportunity requires a supportive environment and the right tools to act on it.
It is a humbling realization to admit that my self-made story relied on doors that were open for me, but might be locked for you. I was so proud of my own strength that I forgot to check if the ground beneath your feet was as solid as mine was.
That honesty is exactly what my generation needs to hear from people who have already reached the top of the mountain. We aren't asking for a free ride, but we are asking for a world where our hard work actually leads to a stable and meaningful life.
I suppose I've been measuring success by the size of my bank account, while you're measuring it by the health of your soul. It's a much more difficult metric to track, but perhaps it's the only one that truly matters in the long run.
It's about finding a balance where we can have financial security without losing our sense of self in the process. We want to build something lasting, just like you did. But we want the foundation to be built on purpose rather than just pure exhaustion.
I am ready to stop telling you how to climb and start listening to what the climb feels like for you today. This conversation is the first time I felt like I'm truly seeing the world through your eyes, Sophia.
I can feel the difference in your voice, and it makes me hopeful that we can finally move past these old illusions. Let's keep this intellectual honesty alive as we figure out what comes next for both of us.
I'm truly glad we stayed here in these chairs and finished this difficult conversation instead of walking away in frustration. It's the first time in years that I've really stopped to listen to the reality of the world you're navigating every single day.
Me too, Dad. Thank you for opening your heart to a perspective that is so fundamentally different from your own life experiences. We may not have found all the answers today, but at least we're finally speaking the same language about our hopes and our struggles.
I still believe that a strong, resilient spirit is essential for any kind of success, but I'll try to remember that the wind isn't always at your back like it was for me. It's a sobering thought to realize that my shortcuts might be completely blocked for your generation by forces beyond your control.
That acknowledgement alone takes so much pressure off my shoulders. and makes me feel truly seen for the first time. We aren't asking for you to fix everything, but just knowing you understand the height of the wall we're climbing makes the effort feel worthwhile.
I've realized that being a good provider isn't just about financial security, but also about providing the emotional space for you to be honest with me. Let's keep this microphone ready for our next dinner, because I've discovered that I still have so much more to learn from my own daughter.
That sounds like a plan I can actually get behind without feeling any of that old, suffocating pressure to perform for you. You've shown me today that even a self-made man can find the strength to evolve and embrace a new way of seeing the world.
It's much harder to change a mind than it is to build a business, but having you as my guide makes the process feel like a new adventure. I'm looking forward to the next chapter of this conversation, wherever it might lead us in this changing world.
I'm proud of us for doing the hard work of truly connecting, and I think our listeners will find a lot of courage in our honesty today. Thanks for being my guest, Dad, and more importantly, for being the person I can always come home to for a real talk. Okay, Dad, our deep dive into hustle culture is over, but we still need to run a quick diagnostic on your grammar. It's time to install the responsibility patch to fix those legacy preposition errors.
I'm ready for the update, Sophia. My system is still a bit overheated from our intense debate, but I can feel my language processing unit improving.
First, let's fix the responsible of glitch. You said you were responsible of the pressure I feel, but that's a major system error.
I always thought of showed the connection between the person and the action. Is there a more compatible preposition for this?
Absolutely, because we always use responsible for when we talk about the cause of a situation. Think of for as the direct link to the burden or the task you're carrying.
I see, so it's about what I am answerable for. I'll make sure to sync that with my database. I am responsible for the outcome.
Perfect. Now let's look at your possibility bug. You used it to describe your success, but in a professional context, you missed a much more powerful word.
I used possibility to mean that anyone could succeed if they tried. Is that word too weak for this high-speed data?
It is, because opportunity describes the specific set of circumstances that make success actually possible. A possibility is just a random chance, but an opportunity is a door you can actually walk through.
That's a sobering distinction to make. I should say I had the opportunity to build a life here, not just a possibility.
Exactly. So let's lock these in with a final drill session. Repeat after me. I am responsible for my own mental health.
I am responsible for my own mental health.
We need to create more opportunities for the next generation.
We need to create more opportunities for the next generation.
System update complete, Dad. You've successfully patched your grammar and raised your communication level for 2026.
I actually feel much more optimized now. Thanks for being the best system administrator a father could ask for.
Today's conversation made me realize that the biggest gap between our generations isn't just about money or technology, but about the visibility of our struggles. We've spent years shouting from different sides of a wall, never realizing that the wall itself was built by the very hustle we once idolized.
I see now that my pride in being, quote, self-made was actually a blind spot that prevented me from seeing the structural support I had. It's a heavy burden to realize that the path I cleared for my daughter might have actually led her into a digital maze with no clear exit.
But in this room, for the first time, we stopped trying to win and started trying to witness each other's reality. This reflection isn't about finding a perfect solution, but about choosing to stand on the same side of the ladder from now on.
I leave this chair with a quieter ego and a much louder sense of curiosity about the world Sophia is building. The hustle might be a shadow, but our shared honesty is the first real light I've seen in a long time.
That concludes our conversation for today. And I truly hope our deep dive into the hustle gave you a new perspective. We've dismantled some old myths today, but the real work of building a healthier future starts now.
I'm leaving this conversation with a lighter heart and a much clearer understanding of why your generation views the world so differently. It was an honor to be your guest, and I promise to be a much better listener at our next family dinner.
To our listeners, don't forget to download the Hustle and Responsibility patch notes from our website to review today's grammar. We'll be back next week to continue building bridges across the generational divide.
Until then, keep your minds open and remember that sometimes the most productive thing you can do is rest. Goodbye for now, and we'll see you in the next episode.